Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this episode of Just Another Year Chicago. My name is Nick Brody. I am joined alongside my good friend and co-host, Tony Stapita. Today, happy Friday. As always, Tony loves talking about money, so let's talk about the Bears and their current salary cap and how they can create even more. The Bears currently have $25,689,286 right now. That is without re-signing current players or cutting or trading players. There's already a lot. They want to build around Justin Fields. The $25 million is not a small amount of money, but then you have other teams that have $66, $68 million, and the Bears definitely want to be put into that position. So Danny Trevathan, Eddie Goldman, and more guys could create a lot of cap if the Bears cut them in a strategic time period. Stay tuned for that. But before we begin, Tony, what is a big trader cut that you could see from the current roster to create salary cap?
Yeah, so I mean, there's of course, like if we traded, Robert Quinn or Khalil Mack, of course that's out there. But I think this would be a sneaky decent one. This would be Angelo Blackson. I like him. I think he's a great player. But so he has a $3.1 million cap hit. However, his dead cap hit would only be $1 million. So quick math there, $2.1 million is the difference that we would save. And that could be the difference. I know that doesn't necessarily get you an entire player, but that could be the difference in, let's say we're in a little battle for a wide receiver and offensive lineman with like the Lions or someone. That could be enough where we bump it up a little more. We give them a little extra signing bonus, whatever it is. And that could be the difference in getting a player to come to our city. So again, I respect Angelo Blackson, good player, but I think that could be a sneaky little way they can kind of add to their cap. So before we begin, and I'll kick it over to you after, Nick, let's just talk about the difference between what the cap is, cap space, and dead cap, because I think that's really important. And I know not everyone is totally up to date on some of these crazy terms that the NFL and different leagues use. So the salary cap in general, it's just essentially an agreement between the league and the players that places a limit on the amount of money a team can spend on on salaries for players. That number is determined each year and is adjusted based off of the revenues of the league. So obviously if the league's doing better, which it usually is every year, that cap goes up. That's what teams expect when they sign deals. So dead cap it's a little subsect. It's inside of something to factor into the salary cap. Dead money is the salary cap space a team must allocate to a particular player who has been cut. It serves as a device to ensure that every dollar a team is paid, players is eventually allocated to that team's salary cap. So you can't just cut a guy and then it's just, all the money's off the books. I don't know exactly how it's determined, Nick. I don't know if you do, but I know there is a way to kind of determine that based on guaranteed money and different stuff.
Yeah, there's a whole calculation behind it. And there's different buckets. So like a certain guaranteed amount versus your actual cap, it goes into the certain amount that is your dead cap. And guys sign certain contracts certain ways. So they will it kind of gives them more comfortability that they know that they're not going to get cut or traded from the team at least. So, if they're starting a family, they're going to be there for 3-4 years. Like they can buy a house and put them through a school system and all that good stuff. So it's a lot of things that players consider when they are signing their contracts and how much they want guaranteed wise versus their base salary versus incentives. So it's a little crazy. I agree that Angelo Blackson though could be a sneaky release. But the guy I'm going to hit on, I think, is the defensive tackle we should get rid of, and that's Eddie Goldman. A lot of mixed feelings about Eddie Goldman. He's good. He's not great, though. That's the one thing, is that Bears fans think Eddie Goldman is the freaking beast of the NFL. No, Akeem Hicks is the beast of the defensive tackle position that the Bears have had. Eddie Goldman's really good depth, probably the best depth player. Could be a starter on other teams, but he's not Aaron Donald. He's not getting after the quarterback like that. So, and the Bears have always had extreme depth at the defensive lineman position. So if we were to cut him in a strategic time period, it'd be smart of the Bears to do so, but it puts him in an uncomfortable position because he's most attractive to cut. But, after June 1st, some guys get their dead cap is less. So they're, they get more, the Bears will get more salary out of it later. But, he has a cap hit of $11.8 million this upcoming season, but his dead cap is $5.15 million. So if you do the math, that's $6.66 million. That's a weird number, bad number. $6.6 million in cap relief that the Bears would get this upcoming free agency. But if they wait till June 1st, it's $8.6 million. So obviously guys are going to be off the board, but there's always a couple free agents that, different players that go ahead and they kind of, are bad with free agency. Like, I know I can get more money after June 1st because you guys are going to clear out more cap. Could be a situation with Eddie Goldman and potentially another player. But, why this move makes sense is Eddie Goldman is not the same player he was a couple of years ago, especially in 2018 and 2017 when he was a beast back then. But, inconsistency of play, injuries, unfortunately, COVID, a bunch of different situations. He hasn't been that consistent person that the Bears need, and they're going to pay him a lot of money this upcoming season. So we have depth at the defensive tackle position. Mario Edwards Jr., Angelo Blackson, who I would prefer to keep. You got to pay Bilal Nichols if you want to get him back. Use that money to sign him and maybe another defensive tackle. There's a lot of things that you can do here in order to do that. So that would be my number one to get rid of cap-wise. But Tony has talked about this guy before and why we should get rid of him. And honestly, the Bears could save some money, but it's likely they're going to try to trade him first instead of cut him. But Tony, go through your favorite person.
Yeah, so Nick Foles, quarterback for the Chicago Bears, may have heard of him. And what's interesting too, Nick, is that June 1st deadline, by the way, it's not just free agents, but it's also that's when you can extend, sometimes they'll do their contract extensions around then for that exact reason. They know the team's got a little more money. Agents are very smart. So Nick Foles, he is 33 years old. We all kind of know who Nick Foles is. He's a depth position, I would say, if I was going to label him as any sort of category on the roster. But we have Justin Fields, and I understand the need for a veteran backup quarterback, but not when his cap hit is 10.66 million to be clear. Dead cap is 7.66 million if he were to be cut. The money that'd be saved is about 3 million. So I think there's a lot of reasons we could all come up with why this makes perfect sense, even for the fact that I don't think he wants to be here anymore.
No.
But just
even with
general,
the new front office.
Yeah, just in general, too much money for a third string quarterback. Although obviously I'm actually okay with holding on to him for a little bit just to see if we can kind of trade him, see if anyone will bite. Because again, he could still be, even if it's just a second string, the veteran quarterback, kind of what he was with the Bears when they brought him in, where it was kind of that veteran quarterback. But I would definitely I'd be okay with, you bite the bullet on the 7.66 mil and you free up the 3 million. Then you cut Blackson or someone like that. You got five and change to mess around with. That go a long way to re-signing a guy like James Daniels. So that's really what I think would be a good move. So before we get into Nick's next pick, here are my picks for this weekend's games. Today we got 3 bets for you. It's always a little hard I record this on Thursday night, try to give you weekend lines. I'm not always out. So my apologies, but here are my 3 favorite picks for Friday and this weekend. I got the Bulls +3. Nick, and I are going to be there. You will see us if you follow us on social media. We'll be doing a little stuff. We got some pretty good seats. So we're excited for that. So my first pick, Bulls +3 against the Bucks. This is just a heart gut pick. And do not guarantee that this one will win. This is just purely pride. Second pick is Utah State, San Jose State. It's about 10:30, I think, 10:30 Central Time is tip off. And that is 137.5 is the total. I have the over in that. Might be about 138, depending on where you see it. I have the over. They have gone over that total the last 4 times they've played each other, twice this year, twice last year. So I'm thinking they're going to do it again. We'll see. They have had a lot of unders separately from each other, but I think they can kind of get this done. We've seen a lot of points scored in these tournaments, so I really do think they'll hit that over. And then my final pick, little fun pick, little soccer pick, Sunday morning EPL, English Premier League action. It's one of my favorite types of bets. It's the Manchester Derby, the Manchester Derby. Some also say Manchester City versus Manchester United. My pick is both teams to score, BTTS, both teams to score. It's like -130, maybe -125, depends on where you see it. It's definitely something you can throw in a parlay if you're making any sort of parlay for the weekend. Otherwise, either way, it's fun. You root for goals. It could be over really early too, and you enjoy the rest of the game, whatever it is. So those are my 3 picks. Back to you, Nick.
Thanks, Tony. Tony has won me a lot of money so far, and I hope he can win you a lot of money too. Stay tuned for the next 2 weeks. We have a very exciting new sponsor that's going to be on our hands, so keep a lookout for that, kind of hinting at something there in regards to winning money. So stay tuned for that. But my next pick is Danny Trevathan, linebacker, fan favorite, leader, locker room guy. not the same player he used to be, unfortunately. And he has a pretty big cap hit. So again, 31 years old. The Bears will likely go young at the linebacker position. You can go back and look at our last mock drafts. Tony and I both hit on linebackers in that draft that I think the Bears can go after. And they may re-sign Alec Ogletree, who was a pretty solid player for the Chicago Bears this past season. So, you re-sign Alec Ogletree for that $2-3 million you just freed up with Nick Foles and Blackson or someone else or Eddie Goldman. And then you go ahead and you go and draft someone, out of college that could be a potential good fit. Put Angelo or, Alec Ogletree on a 1-year contract cheap and do it all over again. But Trevathan's cap hit is $5.7 million. Now here's where things get tricky. His dead cap is $8.9 million because of the way his contract is set up. So technically, if you look at it, the Bears save $3 million. They still owe him money. They unfortunately still lose cap, but they still save a little bit of money by getting rid of him post June 1st, which that one actually makes sense to wait till then to cut him. But he might demand to be cut so he can go see free agency, but then the Bears can say to him, hey, then you got to take a pay cut because we don't want to lose this much cap if we cut you. So there's a lot of different situations. This is probably the most messy one, the way Trevathan's contract is set up. And again, a veteran knew how to set up his contract when he was put in the situation a couple of years ago. But why it makes sense for us to cut him, again, saves a little bit of money. He won't work in the 4-3 defense. Like just his type of play and, the setup as a 4-3 as a whole, Danny Trevathan will not succeed. His injuries have piled up over the last couple of years, making a concern because he's inconsistent. We can't rely on him, messes with the mojo of the team. And also, he isn't Super Bowl Danny T anymore. He isn't 2018 Danny T anymore. But we thank it for his leadership, and we thank it for everything that he's done. Business is business at the end of the day. His jersey's not getting hung up at Hallis Hall. So I think that the Bears just need to, put emotion aside, look at business here, save the money, and move on and get someone younger to fill the position. So, the last guy that Tony's going to hit on, this is a little controversial because he hasn't played lately. When he did, he was fantastic, but we don't know what he's been like the last 2 years. So Tony, going on to our last player of the day.
Yeah. So this is a guy, again, like you said, business is business. That's kind of why, we put it on here. I like him. I think it's important to make sure Poles does his research behind the scenes, get Luke Getsy to kind of, see kind of where his injury progression is. So that guy is Tarik Cohen, running back. Obviously, he's 26 years old. Again, I like Tarik Cohen. And if they're saying, no, he just needs a couple more months, he needs maybe, 6 more months, and then he's good, he'll be back 100%, then I keep him because he is such a weapon. He is that weird kind of like Darren Sproles, like awesome weapon that not every team has. However, we got a lot of running backs. I think, we got two, arguably, obviously David Montgomery is awesome, but Khalil Herbert could start on a lot of teams. Like there's not a lot of space on this roster for the running back position. His cap hit is $5.75 million. Dead cap would be $3.5 million. The money saved would be $4 million back after June 1st. Again, Nick hit on that, where that's kind of the deadline where things free up a bit. So obviously the move makes sense when you just have that much depth at the position, and it's a guy where he was supposed to be back a little earlier, and he just kind of we really haven't heard much, and that frightens me personally, because that means it might be a little more serious than it is, and it sucks. And
it's a big red flag.
I love following him. Yeah, I love following him on Twitter. Again, I love the guy. I hope all the best for him. But unfortunately, he may be a casualty of the cap here. Unless in this part I don't understand, Nick. Maybe you do. How they convert some people's they convert some of the salary into a signing bonus. I know they did that with Khalil Mack over the past couple of years to make cap space. That could be a way to still keep him, and then you kind of save some money, and it's not this just like
I don't know if it's like a luxury tax thing. I don't know what exactly it is, but the Bears have done it every year with Khalil Mack. I mean, besides year one. And he's fine with it because he gets that money right away. Like literally,
seems like
the Bears,
a wild loophole. You're still paying him. Like
you could do that with everybody. I think there's a limit on how many players you can do that with, because it seems to only be 1 or 2 players per year. But still, if you do that with Khalil Mack again, I think they freed up $10 million in cap last year. So that puts you at $35 million. If you put Cohen into play, strategically doing it, that's $39 million. You put Danny T into play, technically that's 42, but you're still chewing a little bit of cap. So, but then you go to Nick Foles, that's 45. You go to Eddie Goldman, and after June 1st, that's $53 million. But the amount of free agents that are going to be available after June 1st and not so hot. So I wanted to say this before we closed out today, and Tony, please disagree if you disagree. But I think that what the Bears should do this year is realize that it's okay not to make the playoffs this year. It is okay to actually have a rebuilding year instead of kind of what we've done the last 2 years, bandaging together a team and hoping for the best. It worked out 1 year, barely, and then that last year was a disaster. But let Fields develop. Draft a bunch of guys, let them develop too. Go out and buy one big name lineman and one big name wide receiver with that 25 million, or technically, let's just be safe, 35 million. You go out and get 2 guys, you re-sign a bunch of other role players. So just a little bit here and there, just for the cap hit wise. And then you kind of just reevaluate everything. And then in 2023, that's when you make the push, because there's going to be a lot more cap available for the Chicago Bears in 2023. I don't know that number off the top of my head. I know it's like a crazy number of guys.
Yeah.
You got to re-sign Roquan Smith. You got to re-sign Jalen Johnson. You potentially have to re-sign Eddie Jackson if he comes back to Eddie Jackson status, and then Justin Fields, big contracts on the way too. You have to plan this out. So got to play a little bit of money ball here when you're the Chicago Bears. But Tony, anything else before we close out today?
I understand what you're saying, and I am not opposed to it as long as they put a plan in front of us. That was the thing that nagging these past regimes kind of didn't necessarily do a great job of, in my opinion. It was they were like, okay, yeah, we need to develop this quarterback. We need to do what we're going to do. But they kind of overpaid just a couple random guys, and they just didn't go all in on it. So we're just a bad team. And Justin Fields, just getting crushed. Mitch, and as much as we want to, hate on Mitch, some people like to hate on Mitch. He was getting crushed back there too. He did what he could with kind of a weird offensive line. So if there's a plan in place, in polls we trust, 3 years, let's get back to the promised land. I'm also okay if they just say screw it and they take a run at it. They try to, almost like the Bulls, try to rebuild on the fly. I can get behind either, but I trust them. They're smart people. What else? Oh, we're gonna be bad again for 1 more year. Okay, I can go on, but
and make sure that. And speaking of the Bulls, make sure that you follow us on Instagram and Twitter. We are going to the Bulls game. Thank you to a very special sponsor, Michelob Ultra. We are going to the Bulls game, and Tony is not driving, and we have a lot of beer on our hands, obviously, for Michelob Ultra. So Tony might be chugging a beer every quarter, every 5 minutes, every minute. We don't know yet. But
to be clear, Nick's not driving either. I just want to make sure.
I am not driving.
Neither of us are driving.
None of us are driving. We're very thankful for the opportunity. So if you want to see some crazy beer chugging and Tony just absolutely take a complete advantage of all-inclusive food and drink, please follow us on Instagram. You are going to see some pretty funny stuff. So with that, thank you very much for joining this episode of Just Another Year Chicago. My name is Nick Rohde, joined alongside Tony Cepeda, and we'll see you guys next time.